Hello everyone, welcome to uCodes. My name is Omar, and in today's video we are going to see how to set up an Express project with TypeScript. So if you've been building your server in Express using JavaScript, then I think it's high time you learn how to do it with TypeScript, because with TypeScript you can have a type-safe environment and a developer-friendly environment to do your applications with. And I think this is the first step into stepping up your back-end development game. So without any further ado, let's get started. So in here I have a fresh folder called Express.ts, and this is where I'm going to set up the project. So go on ahead and use any package manager you want to use. I'll be using npm, so you can just, if you are using npm, just use your package manager instead of npm. So to get things started, let's initialize the project here. This is going to give us package.json, and we have our package.json here. So next, I would like to install our dependencies. So the very first thing we want to install is Express, and then .env to be able to load our environment variables. Let's install that. Nice. So now we have Express and .env. Next, we have to add our developer dependencies. I'm going to do npm add -d. So first thing we want to install is TypeScript. So this is going to be a developer dependency, and the next thing is TS node. So what TS node does is that it executes our TypeScript directly without having to transpile it into JavaScript. And next is just types. So we need a types/node and a types/express. Also, let's install nodemon. Yes. So nodemon is a package that watches our directory and then restarts the server every time a file is changed. Nice. So we have all of our packages installed. Let's take a look at our package.json. You can see under our dev dependencies we have all of these: our TypeScript, TS node, nodemon, type/node, and type/express. And in our dependencies we have node, and we have the .env and express. Nice. So next we have to initialize our TypeScript project here to get a TypeScript config file. So we are going to run npx tsc -init. Nice. So that gives us a new ts config file, which I'm going to open. Nice. So you can see that no inputs were found in config file. Don't worry, we are going to set that up. So here, let's uncomment this line. So our root directory is going to be ./src, and output directory is going to be ./dist. What it means is that the root directory is the root of our project where we are going to have all of our code, and .dist is going to be our build directory, so when we build the project. So we are not going to change anything here. You can just remove stuff we don't need, like this. Yeah. Also, we can remove GSX and then set this to false. Verbatim module syntax, because that is going to make us write type when importing types and other variables that are not typed. So outside here at the bottom, we are going to add include. So this is going to tell it what to include, right? So we are going to include src/anything/anything/anything. So any folder under our src like this that has any file name and any extension, we should include it. And for our exclude, let's use this exclude. So for our exclude, we are just going to exclude directories we don't want to compile. So we definitely don't want to compile our node modules, and also we want to ignore our dist folder. Just adding comma here. Nice. So now we have everything. Now we can just come up here and create our src folder. So I'm going to create src/app.typescript. Nice. So now we don't have that warning again because we have our entry point. And after that, I'm going to create our server.ts. So in my app.typescript, this is where I'm going to be importing express and a couple of other types. Yes, we are going to be importing request, response, next function from express. But before that, let's import application. Let's complete this and say express. So the type of application, request, and response. That's all we need for now. So let's create our application instance. So const app of type application is equal to express. Nice. So I'm just going to register a single route here, which is going to be our slash, and then we get our response of type, rather our request of type, request rs of type response, and yeah, we don't need the next function for now. So all we are going to do here is just do a res.send hello ts, or rather hello from ts and express. Nice. So after that, we are just going to export default application. That is it. We don't want our app to do everything for us. Next, we are going to import that app from ./app, but before that, let's also import from .env. Here we are going to import config, right? And then we just call in the config function like that. Next, let's create our .env file out here, and then I'm going to set the port to 5000. Nice. So after that, we are going to come down here and do our app.listen on our port. What is our port? So our port should be equal to our process.env.port. If that's not available, let's run it on port 3000. So now in our app.listen, we listen it on this port we created, right? And then we take our callback function, and then we log console.log. Let's use a template looker and say server is running on local and http://local host port. Then we add in our ports here, right? Nice. So that is it for our server.typescript file, and from here we can just set up our scripts and start testing it. So let's come to our package.json here, and our main, you can just swap this out to src/index.typescript. I believe this guy is still on, so let me just switch it off. So inside of our script, we don't need this test or script here. We can just remove it and replace it with a build script. So this script is just going to call TSC, and that is it. TSC is going to build out our project into the output directory we specified inside of the package.json, and the next command is to start the build version. So it will just be node dist slash server that's TypeScript. Oh, it will be .js after being built. Next is the one we hear the most about, which is our development server. So we are going to run this using nodejs, and then we are going to say -- exec. What are we going to execute? We are going to execute tsc node in our src slash server.ts. That's basically it. So nodemon is going to execute this command, tsc node server slash src.tsc, and like I said, ts node is just going to run the TypeScript directly without giving us the compiled version. So let's come in here and test it. When we say pm build, nice, our code gets built and output out here in the dist folder. You can see that we are having all of these source maps. We don't want it, so we can just come to our tsconfig, set our source map, and declare, just get rid of all of this. We don't want all of these other outputs. Let's delete that folder and do this thing. Nice, and now we have a much cleaner build, which is like we want one copy of our src folder. Nice. So now we can do pm start to run the build version, and you can see that server is running on localhost port 5000. Nice. So now let's run the development build with pm dev, and it says tsc-node not found. Oh, it's ts ts-node. I don't know what I'm doing there. So pm dev, and hey, look at that. So we have our server running on localhost port 5000, and now when we open that with alt-click, you can see that we have our hello from TypeScript and Express. Nice. So the next thing I want to talk about is actually how I structure my projects when I build with this kind of setup. So inside of my src folder, the very first thing I create is the controllers folder. So we have our controllers, and we have the next thing I create is my routes folder. And also for some people, they create models. If you are building your own model and not using an ORM, you can create a models folder and then a service folder, or other services. Nice. So what does all of these guys do? So let's create a very simple project. This is going to be a fake database. So in here in my models, I'll just create a user.ts or user.ts. That's all. So now we are going to export an interface for our user. Right. So our user is going to have a name. We're going to be of type string, and what else? Age. Okay. Age of type. What is our number? That is it. That's all we have here. Our user must have a name and an age. That's it. So that is our model, right? And then inside of our service, we create our user service .TypeScript file, and now we are going to import our user model from our models, right? So in here we are going to, normally what I do is I use a class here so we can have a user service class, but now we are just going to define everything out here. So the very first thing I want to create is our database, right? I'll just call it database. So this is a mock database. Select database. It's going to have a type of an array of users, and I'm going to initialize it to an empty array. Or to make things easier, let's just create test user. I'm going to call this dude Omar, and he is 12 years old. Nice. So we always have something to work with. And now in here we are going to export a function get all. Alright, so let's do this. This would be export get all and arrow function. Oopsie. Wait, how do you even create an arrow function? I think like that. Yeah, I know how to create an arrow function. So all we are going to do in here is return our database. That is just it. And then we are going to create get user by name. So we might have two users with the same name, but this is just an example. So we can try to get our user from the database. So it will be const db user is equal to our database dot find. We are going to find the user. Let's also get the name here. Forgot name of type string, right? Where this user's name is equal to the name we pass. Right? So if we don't have a db user, we are going to throw an error saying user not found. Else, if we have that user, we can just return our db user. That is it. So this is our service. As you can see here, this service only cares about the database. If it has any error, it will just throw it. So this is where we actually get to create a custom error handler. But for now, let's just leave it as this. So the next thing we want to create after our service is our controller, because our controller is going to take the request and route it, and it's going to take the request, and then get everything we need from the request body and execute the desired function from the service. So this is going to be our user controller .TypeScript. Nice. So in here, the very first thing I want to import is all of this stuff from Express. Right. So we're going to import response and request and the next function. Right. So the very first controller. Also, let's just use the class so you can see how I do it using class. So I'll say class user controller. Right. That is just it. So the use of this class is just to have all of our code in one place. That's just it. I don't really use a lot of the class features, right? So to get all our users, it is a function that takes a request of type request response of type response, and then a next of type next function. Nice. So to get all of our users, we don't really have to worry ourselves. We just have to say const users equals to, now this is where we import these functions from dot slash services slash user service. We're going to import get all and get user by name, right? Or we can just do get everything as user service. Alright, so we can just say user service dot get all. Alright, and now once we have our users, we can do response dot JSON. Alright, and then we can add a message in here saying all users fetched successfully, and then we pass our users array. Nice. So after that, that is going to return. So one thing you have to notice is that we are returning after we send the response, because when we do something like this, TypeScript is going to complain when we try to use this controller later on. So we don't want that. We are just going to return after doing everything. Next is our get by name. So we do get by name, which is a function that takes everything that this dude takes. Alright, and that's it. So to get by name, you have to grab the username from the response from the request or parameters, right? So let's just say const name is equals to our request dot params. Alright, so also let's handle our error here. If not name, if you do not have a name, I'm just going to throw an error saying that name param is required. Nice. So after that, we can say that our user is equal to user service dot get user by name, and then we pass in the name, and then we can say response dot JSON message user. Let's just leave it like that, and then we pass the user here. So now we have a service and we have a controller. Let's export an instance of this class. So export default new user controller. That is it. So we have a controller, we have our service. Next is our route. So I'm going to create my user route.ts. Nice. So now we have to import something also from Express. And what is that? We need a router. So you can see our const user route is equal to the router. That is it. So we can do our now user route dot get, right? So now to get on the slash endpoint, we are going to call a function from our controller. So user controller, right? So I'm going to do user controller dot get all. That is it. And then for our user route dot also get but here we have a slash colon name. So here we are expecting a name from the user. We do get by name. That is it. So out here we just export default user route. Great. So I hope you guys can see the flow now, right? So the request is coming to this route, and then this route is passing it to a controller, and then this controller is calling a service to execute the request. So now we have different layers, right? We have different layers that the request has to go through. So that in case we have any error or any issues anywhere, we know where to get to that error and fix it. So next, now we have our service, we have our model, we have our controller, and next all that is left is to come into our application here and register that route. So let's also import it. Okay, so we are going to import user route, that's it, right? So we are going to do app to use, right? We are going to use what? Slash users. Alright, so we have slash users, then we use our user routes here, and that's it. Now our application knows about our users endpoint. So let's just open this here. How do you open it to the side? Yeah, like that. So when we use this user routers, that is slash users, you can see that at slash is as an empty endpoint, we are going to get all of the users, and then slash users slash name, we are going to get our user by name, right? So remember that we were throwing some errors, right? So let's actually run the server and see what happens before we create our custom error handler. So now let's run our dev. Nice. So now let's come to our localhost 45,000. You see we are getting hello from Express, right? And then when we go to slash users, nice, you can see that we have our users being fetched from the controller and the service. And now we have our user name, Omar, age 4. Now let's try to get users slash Omar. You see the user is fetched and the name is Omar, age 12. Now let's do something that is going to throw an error. Let's search for something that does not exist. Okay, we get an error, user not found, but this error is not what we want. Okay, we want a response, not just a broken server, as you can see out here. Nice. So to do this, we have to create our own custom middleware to handle this error. So inside of our SRC, I'm going to create a middleware folder, and I'm going to create an error handler.ts. So a middleware is also just another route handler, just like our route handlers we have in our controller. So let's also import request, right, response, or response, next function, and yeah, I think that is it. Alright, so now I'm going to export const error handler. Also take all of this stuff here. So the difference between our error handler and our normal handlers is that our error handler also takes an error here as an argument or as a parameter, error of type. For now we are just using a generic error type, because we only support one type of error, which is the 400 badge request or error. Because if you notice here, all of the requests you have, okay, we do have a 404 error. So to be able to differentiate all of this, we have to create our own custom errors and extend from TypeScript error, so we'll be able to do something like not found error, and then we decide what message to send and the type of and the response code depending on the type of the error. But since now we are using a generic error, we will have to compare the strings and then try to, but we don't want to do that. Any request is just going to be a 400 request. So yeah, the very first thing we do, once this error handler is called, we know that there is an error, right? So let's just try to say console.log or error occurred, right? Occurred. I just say an error occurred. So you can also print the error dot stack here to get all of the stack trace. This is for the developer, alright? But for the user or for the consumer, we just have to send back a response. So I'm going to just say response.json message, right? To the error dot message, right? And then we have the code. So I'm just going to say 400, and then out here we call the next function, and then we return. Okay, so now we have this. We aren't even using our request or object, but yeah, we're just going to let it be. Oh yeah, so that is it. Next we have to register this error handler. Let me just copy the name and come into our app.ts. Okay, so here we have to register it just the way we register this other handler. So we do app.use, and then we pass the error handler. We don't need any route. We want it to work on every route. So that's why we are passing it down here after every other route. If we have like 100 other routes, we are going to have them above the error handler, because when they have any error here, they are going to throw it. So if this error handler is above them, it won't be able to catch the error they are throwing. Okay, so that is it. Now let's run our server again. Good. So now in our browser, when we try to get Omar, you can see that we have our user fetched with the name Omar. And when we try something else, like we could, we get a pretty error. You can see that we have the message is user not found and the code is 400. So the client will be able to do something with this, right? Nice. So now let's try something else and see user not found. User not found. Great. So that is it. Also down here you can see the stack trace that we printed. Alright, so when we trace it, we are going to trace it back to where the issue occurred. Yeah, so that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and yeah, I'm pretty sure from this video you've learned how to set up Express with TypeScript, and not only that, but also a very good folder structure for simple projects. Okay, for even bigger projects there's a different folder structure that they use, but even this is being used in a couple of projects. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. If you learned a thing or two, please do hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications, and like the video. I have an upcoming TypeScript video coming on, so yeah, you don't want to miss that. Thank you so much for watching. See you guys on the next one.